What's going on, everybody? It's that time again. The AllSooners Podcast, episode 153 on this Wednesday, October 26th, 2022. Fresh off the bye, ready to hit Ames. Josh Callaway in OKC. Ryan Chapman at Tyler Media right there behind him in OKC as well. John Hoover in Tulsa. Gentlemen, how are we doing? Are we rested up? Do we feel good for the stretch run after the bye?
I'm glad you asked. I'm thinking about changing to wide receiver for the rest of the season. Just to let you guys know.
Your
So
heart's on offense.
my heart's on offense.
Yeah, I don't blame you one bit. I'm just excited that this is the closest that Josh and I get to pod on a midweeks. We're about a mile and a half from each other, as opposed to the normal massive gaping holes of land that separate us.
Yeah, you should have just came over at that point. We should just sit right here, and we'll just two-man it. It feels good after the bye. I think that weekend off is going to serve well for everyone. I feel a lot better going into the final 5 games here. Got some good road trips coming up. Gonna be a fun finish of the season. Like Brent Venables said in his press conference yesterday, all the games are winnable. They're all losable. Should be an entertaining finish. The end of the season could go a lot of different ways, and it's gonna be fun to see how it shakes out. We'll be in Ames this weekend. We'll break that matchup down in just a little bit, of course. But let's start with kind of wrapping up the bye week, if you will. Who you dove into what to kind of expect, both trends from Brent Venables' past and whatnot, on what we should see after the bye. Because obviously we talked about it a lot. Anybody who's been with us for a while was with us last season. OU sucked after the bye with Lincoln Riley. It was a weird problem, and it was bad last year. That Baylor game was right after the bye, and it was probably the worst game they played all year, or either that or the Kansas game, even though they won that. That's really your conversation. So can OU put that to bed with the new regime and actually do what you're supposed to do after a bye and look refreshed and rested and be better? It's going to be interesting to see how that looks.
Yeah, Bob Stoops had nothing but success after the open date with that stretch of between 2009 and 2014. He was about 500, but early in his career and late in his career, he had great success after a bye week. You look at what, and of course, Brent Venables was a huge part of those early Bob Stoops teams, right? So he knows what the formula is, or the secret sauce, or whatever you want to call it. He goes to Clemson, and Clemson is something like 12-1, 13-1, whatever it was, after a bye week when Brent Venables was at Clemson under Dabo Swinney. So he knows what to do. He knows what the formula is and what the roadmap is to get through. How much do you practice? How much do you back off? How much do you give them? How much do you take? So you got to believe that they're going to be better just as a trend overall long haul than they were under Lincoln Riley. The Sooners were 4-3 after an open date. Regular season games after an open date, 4-3, which it's mind blowing when you put it into context of how good Stoops was. So yeah, Lincoln never figured it out, and who knows if Brent will. We'll know, in about 5 years what his trends are. But I get the feeling he gave him some time off. Look. He talked about this team being tired after 7 straight weeks and after the Texas game, and they had a game after that, of course, played Kansas. But he talked about him being tired, needing to be refreshed. So what did he do? He gave him 2 light days, 1 heavy day, a community service day, and then 3 days off, which was brilliant for all of us because there was no media last week, no media availability. So we were able to refresh as well. But yeah, that's it's something that he's going to have to figure out as he goes. And each team is different. Each team has different needs.
Well, especially too, one of the, I don't know if it's a problem, I don't know if it's a solution, whatever, is that not a ton of depth on both sides of the ball, but the guys that are there for the most part are a lot of veteran guys, right? So it kind of served what they need to do on both ends. Deshaun White talked about it on Monday night about how it was very professional, how it was handled you guys need to be locked in. We're going to give you these lighter days, but also you got to be locked in mentally, because if for the linebackers, for instance, if Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie, and Jaron Kanek are getting those reps on that particular drill or whatever, you guys still need to be in it just because you're physically not going through it, things like that. And so I think the players are appreciative of it. Deshaun White, again, talked about you don't realize how much you're on your feet over the course of a football season until you're hitting the off week and they kind of throttle it down a little bit and everyone seems refreshed and rejuvenated. And we know it paid dividends against Kansas, right? Because even before the bye week, that was a week that it wasn't the week off against Kansas. It wasn't just the Monday walkthrough that was last year, but there were a few less first team reps for those nailed on starters that kind of put some juice back in their legs. And that's kind of what Brent Venables has talked about, dating back to that Kansas press conference of this is the time of the year anyway, where you start to tailor down some of the physical stuff, ramp up the mental, and that's any team. So it'll be interesting to see what this Oklahoma team looks like on Saturday, because you're not expecting wholesale changes. It is a lot of veteran guys. If they could have gone through some of the mental stuff and are fresher, maybe that'll help this team perform through the last 5 weeks. We'll have to see.
Yeah, obviously the bye also an opportunity to, theoretically get healthier. The big one for Oklahoma is Billy Bowman. Brent Venables talked about that a little bit yesterday. He said there was no timetable yet. I didn't really get a great sense that he was going to play, but he also didn't really rule it out either. So we'll see. Obviously, we know how important he is to that OU defense. Arguably, Oklahoma's best defensive player. He's certainly in the conversation for that. He's for the top. So we don't know if Billy Bowman's going to be back. Oklahoma's 2 worst games of the year were when he played like 2 seconds and then we didn't play at all, TCU and Texas. How important is it to get Billy Bowman back ASAP? Can they get through Iowa State, who's not an offensive juggernaut by any means, but you want to get this guy back on the field for the reasons I just said. I mean, you're kind of thin in the secondary. He's arguably one of your best defensive players. You need him back soon, you would think.
Yeah, sooner than later is the way Brent talked about it, and that's probably for the best that they get him back sooner than later. Key Lawrence had the hamstring there earlier in the season. He seems to be okay now, but you miss Billy Bowman. What do? You put Woody Washington over there from corner to safety. Who knows how that eventually shook things out, because DJ Graham played a lot more with Woody Washington at corner or at safety, and now you're seeing DJ Graham move over to wide receiver. So there's like fallout unexpectedly from one guy being injured. You put a freshman like Robert Spears Jennings in. He came in, had some nice plays, but clearly he's a freshman. He needs time to grow into that role, being a leader and being someone that the coaches and the players can count on. Had a nice hit on Jason Bean, the quarterback. Really drove him out of bounds, hit him so hard he knocked him under the bench. And it was a clean hit, perfectly done, well-timed. Everything about it was what old school Sooner fans like and miss about the game back in the 80s and 90s, right? So it's better if they have Billy Bowman, because he is kind of that quarterback of the defense in some ways, especially the secondary. You see how they play without their quarterback on offense, and playing similarly without their quarterback on defense. So, yeah, my sense, and I'm just guessing here, it's Wednesday, it's noon. We get to maybe peek in a little bit at practice, at the end of practice, in the final few minutes of practice. We get a couple of seconds of watching with our own eyes, no video, of course. But you see Billy Bowman out there running at a pretty good clip. And so they're trying to get him back, get him moving. Brent Venables talked about stability and, getting back in football fitness, football shape. That means he's running. So if he can get to full speed, kind of like what Chris Kleiman said about Adrian Martinez, if he can get to full speed some point during the middle of the week, maybe he can come in and play the majority of the snaps.
Yeah, it'll be interesting just because outside of Billy Bowman, it feels like Justin Harrington's a guy that was moved over mostly to safety since it's been Deshaun White and only Deshaun White at the Cheetah, really. For the most part of the season, you haven't seen a ton of him. It's been Broyles and Trey Morrison and Key Lawrence kind of in that rotation on the back end. So it'll be fascinating to see what those solutions are if a Robert Spears Jennings, if Billy Bowman doesn't play, can kind of get a few more snaps, what that looks like. Did Harrington earn some trust on the practice field, things like that. And then a big problem that this defense has just had, too, is we mentioned DJ Graham flipping over. That also, the emergence of CJ Colton helps out with that. Woody Washington bouncing from safety to corner. Things in this defense are much more complicated than the Alex Grinch defense, right? Everyone knows that. You need communication. And Oklahoma hasn't really had a set back 5 in the secondary yet, with all the moves and all that stuff they've had to do. from Key Lawrence being in and out, Billy Bowman. So I wonder if that also contributes to some of the miscommunication, things like that. Because I know that the goal of the defense is everyone knows what everyone's doing. That way you understand how you fit into all this. Well, it's clear that guys can't do their own jobs right now in some instances on some plays, much less understanding the defense as a whole. And that's what's to be expected when you're in year one, right, of a new system. Having all of that shuffling and rotating on the back end can't have helped the communication and busts and things like that just because of injury and the wear and tear of a season.
What do you guys make of the, we haven't talked about it that much, of the DJ Graham move to receiver? Brent Venables finally shed a little light on it, not a lot, but he shed some light on it at his press conference yesterday, just kind of pretty much making it sound like it was DJ Graham's decision. Like he wanted to play offense. He said his love is offense. Whenever he came to Oklahoma, the thought was that he could have a chance to play either way, depending on how things shook out. And he's on offense now where there seemingly isn't really a need for him. I mean, the receiver spot is pretty deep.
Yep.
Where it's almost the exact opposite at the others, and the corner spot was really thin there for a minute. It's a weird deal with DJ making this move because it doesn't seem like there's a path to him being on the field this year, on offensively at least.
I'd say it's unexpected because he was playing so much. He was in the rotation. I think he had gotten a start or two, if I'm not mistaken, at some point. Maybe not. Maybe maybe it'd been Woody and Jaden
Davis.
Jaden Davis, yeah, but he had been coming in first guy off the bench, and it's like you said, the receiver position is pretty loaded. It's not like you're just going to go over there and start running those plays and be at that level. You need time to adjust in. You've only got 5 games left. So what this looks like to me, again, I'm offering an educated guess. I'm not reporting anything. I don't have any inside sources that are telling me this, but what it looks like is he might be laying a foundation for the future. In other words, he wants to play receiver next year. And if you read the body language, guys, Ted Roof, Jeff Lebby, Brent Venables, all 3 of them were asked about it this week at the press conferences. The 2 coordinators said, you'll have to ask Coach Venables. End of discussion. Venables had the shortest answer that he's had in 10 months of doing this, which is he and his dad talked. We talked about it. His offense is where his heart lies, and so he wanted to switch to offense. End of discussion. You read all that stuff together, put it all together, try to read between the lines, and I get the feeling that DJ Graham is not happy playing defense at Oklahoma.
Yeah, just because, like you guys have both said, it makes no sense as far as where does he fit into the offense, things like that, because the problem at wide receiver has not been who's going to catch the football. It's are there enough footballs to go around, because Braden Willis is deserving of 8 to 10 targets a game. Marvin Mims is obviously deserving of 8 to 10 targets a game. Jalil Farouk has come on strong and really spun out of that Alamo Bowl into a breakout season here. Oh, by the way, you're still underutilizing Drake Stoops. And oh my God, every time Gavin Freeman gets on the field, he proves he's a gamer. Shout out Jeff Lebby. So there are not enough touches to go around right now already, on top of how much they want to feed Eric Gray and Javonte Barnes. So this is clearly, to me, and again, this is just looking at the situation, I'm not long for playing corner, whether that's DJ Graham saying I'm not long for playing corner, or the coaches saying we've worked with him. Like, I don't know which side that is, but by the way that Brent Venables talked about it, definitely felt like a DJ Graham wants to play wide receiver. So just go ahead, make that move now and get that head start. There's no reason to finish out the year at corner when CJ Colton's come on, and Gentry Williams was mentioned by Ted Roof amongst all the other freshmen, so that he was giving away all the information, know the information at once. That's a savvy old coach move. But Gentry Williams did get a mention as far as a guy that took some strides in the off week. So maybe he's able to work in there and get a small handful of snaps.
I think Kenai Walker's number 2 at one of the corners on the depth chart right now too. So there's another name. The thing that may be the most telling, and maybe this is one of those situations where Hoover's puts his deputy dog kind of nose on and starts sniffing around for clues when there are none, right? I'm reading too much into the situation, right? They didn't even bother to give him an alternate number last week against Kansas 2 weeks ago, when they said, yeah, you can move to wide receiver. And he comes out now, hey guys, I'm a wide receiver now. And he comes out and he's wearing number 9. which is the same number as the best player on the team, Braden Willis. You're not playing on the offense at all if Braden Willis is on the field because he has the same numbers. You're not allowed to duplicate numbers. They didn't even bother giving him a new number.
Yeah.
So maybe it was so late in the week that they couldn't do anything with the jersey, but at the same time, they have that throw-on jersey that you can wear if you're going to play on special teams on the same as a duplicate number. They didn't even bother. So I don't think he's going to play wide receiver at all this year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, throw on another guy's, the names just come right off. I mean, just throw it on anything. Yeah, so I mean, that was telling. I agree with you on that. Because you thought they'll throw something on him and maybe he'll get out there and because we know he can catch.
Yep.
We've seen that. He's got hands, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a move for the future. Maybe a guy who's looking ahead to, maybe again guessing, looking ahead another place to play, saying, hey, I can play both offense and defense. Who knows? We'll see. We all like TJ Graham. We all have always felt like he's incredibly smart. His football IQ is high. He's very athletic, obviously. It never added up to where this guy should be a big part of your team, and it's never felt like he was that last year or this year. Maybe this is what gets him there down the road.
He's great in interviews, too. He's one of the top 5 guys on the team in interviews.
Yeah, awesome. So, I don't know. We'll see how that shakes out here if he does get in there at all the rest of the season. And if watching, he'll that would be kind of like something. He comes in and makes like a big play at some point, like in Bedlam or something, catches a big touchdown. That'd be
OBJ catch.
Right. You could see it. You could see it happening. Why not? So we're on the home stretch here. We're going to break down the Iowa State game in just a minute. Real quick, we'll wrap up this segment. There's 5 games left. We talked about it a lot. 2 good teams. I guess I don't really know what Baylor is. Maybe I should take the good label off them for the moment. We have Baylor and Oklahoma State, who's at worst probably the second best team in the Big 12. Oklahoma State is. And you could make the argument that on a neutral field, they have a very good shot to beat TCU. But we'll call them the second best team for now. They're at home, and you got to go to Iowa State, to West Virginia, to Texas Tech, who are 3 of the bottom teams in the conference, but it's all on the road, and the conference is really, really deep, like we said. Power rank these games. What in your mind is the most difficult game left? Is it Bedlam, even though it's at home, or is it one of these road trips that stick out? And where does this game Saturday fall, I guess, into that? Which one of these games stands out to you as that's going to be the tricky one?
Yeah, they're all tricky. There's a degrees of trickiness, but the 2 best teams they face are in Norman, so you'd think they're winnable because they're playing a home game. They're so good at home. And the 3 easy teams, easy being in quotation marks, the 3 bottom of the standings type teams that they're playing, they're all on the road, and it's always tricky to go to Morgantown and Ames and Lubbock. Always something funky happens in Lubbock. Something funky happens in Ames, and OU's undefeated in Morgantown still, but you just know at some point that thing is going to turn. It's coming. I don't know. I went through, I handicapped each game and put a percentage chance on each one. See if you guys agree with me here. I got Oklahoma's chance of winning at Iowa State, 60%. 60% chance of winning. That's not high. Baylor at home, 55%. Okay, now we're getting down the road a little bit. That's November 12th. But the following week, go on the road at West Virginia. I got 65%. That's not a great amount of confidence, 65% at West Virginia. Oklahoma State, they're looking better. They beat Texas at home. This is a team that has clearly got flaws. They come into Norman. I'm saying the chance of OU beating them in Norman right now, if they played this week, would be 40%. There's a lot to like about OU winning 9 of the last 10 against Oklahoma State in Norman. Okay, but Oklahoma State's a better team right now, so I got it at 40%. And then Texas Tech, I got that one at 55%. Season finale in Lubbock. They're all tricky. They're all going to be a real challenge.
Yeah, I look at Oklahoma's glaring hole is the defense, right? And so when you look at that, Oklahoma State has that blend of offense and defense. They're obviously the most difficult game left. Baylor, Reese, what he's done in that run game coming on strong. Oklahoma can't stop the run. They just can't do it. So for me, that's still the second most difficult. Then you give me Texas Tech at third just because of how efficient they are throwing the football. Tough road trips, all of them. But I would put Iowa State at fifth and West Virginia at fourth just because I know that Iowa State has the best defense. That's going to be a big struggle. Iowa State's run game is laughable. It's so bad in the 120s. That's OU's biggest weakness. And so, not that OU's going to go out there and shut down the run and have a ton of success, but Iowa State is the team least equipped to hurt Oklahoma on the ground. And if Oklahoma can have success on the ground, then Brent Venables can get a little bit more creative in throwing more help over to the 9.5 on average catches a game that Xavier Hutchinson has. So that's the team that Oklahoma's most likely to stop the run against. So they have the bigger weapon between the West Virginia and Iowa State offenses, but give me Oklahoma being able to more easily handle that. So I'd take West Virginia as the fourth most difficult, and then this Iowa State game on paper, the quote-unquote easiest in a slate that's not easy at all. They could lose all of these games very easily.
Absolutely could. Like Brent Venables said his presser yesterday, they're all winnable, they're all losable. I agree completely. It's exactly what we said in the post-game show after the Kansas game. They are all winnable and all losable. I'm pretty much agree with the way Hoover had it kind of stacked up. I would maybe move Baylor. Baylor is so weird. They might stink. I don't know. I don't know what Baylor is. Coming into the year, I thought they were the best team in the conference. They were picked to win. Most people did, but they've had some ugly games. I don't know. I don't really know what they are, but I do think that I think maybe the two trickiest are Bedlam, just because Oklahoma State is clearly the best team of this group, but then I think Lubbock at the end is going to be really tough. I mean, last game of the year in Lubbock, that just feels like a night game, and I don't know, that feels like a hard one. That place is insane. The place is scary. That place it's a frightening place. Their students legitimately scare me a little bit, so that's going to be nuts. And yeah, that's going to be a tough one. They're all tough though, like we said, they're all tough, and you better find a way to get the one. If it's there for you to win it, you need to take advantage of it, because you don't want to lose, 4 of these. All of a sudden you're looking at 5 and 7 and you didn't make a bowl, and that would be a disaster. So we'll see how it shakes out, but it's going to be fun. That's for sure. Every game going to be entertaining, and we're going to break down this next one in the second segment. Oklahoma, Iowa State. What are we watching for? What are the expectations? All that good stuff. Full OU Iowa State preview coming up in the next segment right here on the AllSooners Podcast. On Twitter, you can follow AllSooners at @all_Sooners. Ryan's at _Ryan Chapman. Hooves at John E. Hoover. I'm at Josh M. Callaway. Our website is allsooners.com. We are a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. All right, segment 2, Oklahoma, Iowa State preview time. Sooners and Cyclones, 11 o'clock Saturday morning in Ames, Jack Trice Stadium. We're all going to be there. It's looking cold. To be honest, it's looking cold. I think by the time the game gets going, it'll get to tolerable. Like, it'll be all right. But in the morning, like driving up to the stadium and walking in, bundle up. I think it's going to be pretty frigid at Jack Trice, which is funny because the only other time I've been there, it was blazing. It was like early September, and it was really, really hot. So it's a bit of a switch around this time around. For Oklahoma and Iowa State, Cyclones come in. It's been heavily documented by OU, by Brent Venables, the coordinators, the players, that Iowa State's 4 losses this year have all been one-possession games. So 3 and 4, they haven't won any Big 12 games, but every game they've played has been close. The last game they played, they're also coming off a bye. 2 weeks ago, they had Texas on the ropes in Austin. Probably should have beat them. They had them dead to rights and let them get away pretty much in that game in Austin. They have a really good defense. Offense is kind of gross. Don't have a lot. They have Xavier Hutchinson, who's maybe the best receiver in the conference, but other than that, there's just not a lot of weapons there. All that being said, it's a 1-point spread for OU, favorite, right? Last I checked, at least. OU was a 1-point favorite in Ames. What are some early thoughts on this ball game here? This is a hard game to get a read on.
It is. You're 100% right. It's a hard game to predict because Iowa State plays a different brand of defense than just about everybody else in the Big 12. Mm-hmm. Their scores in the Big 12, 7-point loss to Baylor at home when Baylor was ranked number 17. 3-point loss on the road at KU when KU was undefeated. Number 22, Kansas State hosts them, Iowa State, and the final score was 10-9. 10-9. And then at number 22, Texas, last week, you mentioned it, had a chance at the end. Was his knee down? Did he fumble? Did he get hit in the head? Should there have been targeting called? They end up losing 24-21 to Texas in Austin. So, yeah, then they get an open date last week. They're able to kind of rest, recover, And you just feel like Iowa State is on the verge of breaking through, getting over that hump. The way they play defense, you guys, is very impressive because they don't have a ton of all-stars. They don't have a bunch of future NFL draft picks on this defense. What they do have is a scheme and a coaching staff that knows what they're doing with that scheme. And they get guys that have, as Brent Venables said multiple times yesterday, they buy in to that scheme. So that 3-3-5 that John Haycock runs is an impressive scheme, but at the same time, the players buy in and the level of commitment and the effort that you see them play with every play, it's different than what you see elsewhere in the Big 12. And that's why I asked Ted Roof about it. Is there anything unique? Is there anything that jumps out at you? I know you're the defensive coach and your job is to watch the other team's offense, but how much respect do you have for the job that they do defensively? Because it's unique. You don't see guys on the regular like Iowa State making tackles with that kind of percentage, not missing tackles, not having coverage busts, not having missed run fits on every other play. You see that throughout the Big 12, even when the Big 12 is pretty decent at defense. Iowa State doesn't do any of that, like almost ever. That's why they're so fundamentally sound.
Yeah, it'll be a massive test for this offensive line, right? Because something that Brent Venables talked about that Iowa State does really well is that when you can get into that 3-3-5, I think he actually talked about this on his coach's show Monday night. It all runs together a little bit, but when you are that good at what you do, you can present a perfectly balanced picture every single snap, which tips your hand not at all to the opposing offense, right? So Andrew Rame, Dylan Gabriel are going to be working together to understand that the few times that there is a little bit of pressure, things do look a little bit different. What does that picture look like? Things like that. They're going to have to run the ball. Brent Venables talked about, I thought he had a really good quote about, everyone says against this kind of defense, you have to take what they give you, which is fine, but it also, you have to execute with great precision to make sure that, hey, if you get in the right play call on this run play, you've got to get your 7 yards on that run play because they're not going to give that to you again. That's how disciplined this defense is. So that'll be interesting. Then on the other side, here's I already talked about Iowa State's inability to run the football. Xavier Hutchinson, you'll know it's coming, right? Woody Washington talked about that everyone knows that the ball's coming a ton to Xavier Hutchinson. And Hunter Deckers has shown at times he can be frisky, but he's a turnover machine. He can't stop throwing interceptions. He can't stop fumbling the football, whether it's knee down, gets pummeled, anything like that. But that's going to be the difference. You have to force those turnovers to take those possessions away. And, oh, by the way, this Oklahoma defense has reverted back to the days of making backup quarterbacks look like Heisman contenders. So Hunter Deckers can be that frisky quarterback, and this feels like the perfect formula for him to come out and have his breakout day where he doesn't throw those interceptions and he does make those plays to Xavier Hutchinson, and Iowa State puts a couple of points on the board. So it's going to be fascinating what the give and take is on this, because everything that you'd feel confident about attacking the Iowa State offense, you're like, okay, well, Oklahoma also stinks at defending the run. So maybe Iowa State has some success on the ground. Okay, Oklahoma has really struggled with Quentin Johnson, Xavier Worthy, those guys. Now you got Hutchinson coming in, who's a more physical version of that. So it's an interesting matchup of strength on strength, offense versus defense, OU offense versus Iowa State defense, then weakness on weakness, which is why I think a lot of people are like, yeah, that's a 1.5 point line, and no one knows what to do with it.
I thought it was kind of surprising. We mentioned right now I got OU is favored by 1 on the nose. No hook. ESPN's matchup predictor. I don't put a lot of stock in that, but it's interesting to look at. You might be surprised by this. 62.2% chance that Iowa State wins at home. So that has them as a heavy favorite, which is interesting. That's a big number, 62.2%. Mm-hmm. This game, that just kind of goes to show that this game it feels like a pick'em in reality. I mean, it could really go either way. What's the matchup that you're watching the most as far as Oklahoma needs to win that if they're going to win this game? Is it making sure you get some points on the board? I mean, is it getting a rush on Decker? I mean, what is it to you that stands out as Oklahoma's got to take advantage of that?
So it's interesting. Ryan mentioned the weakness on weakness and the strength on strength. Oklahoma's offense, when it's running at its absolute best, is not as good as Iowa State's defense when Iowa State's defense is running at its absolute best. So I would give the advantage to Iowa State there. And then it's kind of a push with who's worse, Iowa State's offense or Oklahoma's defense. Historically, recently, it's kind of a push. So who's got the advantage? Do we have to turn to special teams? Do we have to turn to like X factors and block kicks and who makes the clutch field goal into the wind with 2 minutes left? Do we have to, look at field position and run backs and things like that? Hang time and his punting, right? How are these other factors going to play into the game? Is somebody going to get a scoop and score that you can't predict, that you don't expect? This is going to be one of those thunderclap games where nothing's going on, and all of a sudden something happens. It's a thunderclap, and it's boom, 6 points the other way, and you're like, okay, that could be the turning point in the game. That's going to be just the way these teams are structured. Who's got the advantage in special teams? I don't really know. Oklahoma special teams has been pretty good. I don't know how good Iowa State's has been, but it hasn't been good enough to allow them to make a difference in any of the games. They're still 0-4 in conference play, so maybe that's where Oklahoma has a slight advantage.
Well, and that's where some of the we ran the story on Sunday, right? Key Lawrence looking like Key Lawrence again against Kansas. When he was playing his best last year, he was a forced fumble. Like one of those guys that was around the football, and the Jalen Redmond, you mentioned the scoop and score, the Jalen Redmond scoop and score last year against Iowa State, who forces that's a forced fumble by Key Lawrence. So having a guy like that on the field, that's really important. Having a healthy CJ Colden, the only one in the secondary who looks like he's giving a rip about catching footballs, have him on the field. That's really important. That's why we talk, if Billy Bowman can find a way to get cleared and get on the field, he's a guy that, too, though he hadn't hauled an interception yet, jumping routes, things like that. Like the chances should be there to force turnovers, but the key word is what this defense I don't think has seemed to understand. I know they get it and they're just not able to make the plays, that we call it forcing a turnover for a reason. You're not going to get a Quinn Ewers, oh my God, that ball was supposed to go out of bounds and it happened to hang up and CJ Colden was able to basically fair catch it in the Cotton Bowl. That's the only gimme this Oklahoma defense has gotten, and they struggle to be in position and then capitalize. So Iowa State, we know if Dylan Gabriel has an errant pass, Iowa State's probably going to pick it off if a guy's in the area. That's what they do. That's what that defense does. So that's why defensively for Oklahoma, getting as close to full strength or getting some new faces on the field who, are fighting to rally to the football and make good things happen. That could be what flips the game. And that's probably what will flip the game. Whoever kind of wins that turnover battle and is able to not have a massive mess up on special teams.
Yeah. And Josh, just to reiterate what you asked me was what's a matchup, a specific matchup you're looking forward to. It's got to be Oklahoma's offensive line and how they perform against that front 6/7 that Iowa State puts out there. Will McDonald is an All-American, Brent Venables said, mentioned in by name. That's not the most common thing for the opposing head coach to mention by name the other team's best player, but Brent Venables did. Will McDonald, defensive end. He's 6'3", 236. Listen to this, you guys. You're going to love these matchups. J.R. Singleton is the defensive tackle. Isaiah Lee plays nose guard. Singleton's 300. Isaiah Lee is 292. Their edge rusher on the other side, he doesn't play it. He doesn't start. He doesn't play a ton, but he's listed as the starter at defensive end if they were to ever go to 4. Blake Peterson's 260. Now their linebackers run 231, 260 in the middle. That's a Ryan Vance, and 242. 231, 260, and 242. And then they play that 3 safety alignment. Guess how big their safeties are? 212, 214, and 207. They've got big guys everywhere. And then one of their corners is small, not small, but Anthony Johnson, 6 foot 207 as a free safety. He's got 48 consecutive starts. So I'm looking at their 2 deep, and it really jumps out at you the amount of experience they have and the size that they back it up with.
It hasn't really set in for me that it's not going to be Brock Purdy catching the snaps. He was there forever. And it's a good thing because we're still in Brocktober, so they would have called him one more time before the month was over, which would have been disastrous for Oklahoma. it's really almost a shame for the Cyclones. I wonder if Iowa State fans feel like if we could have just had those guys for like maybe one more year to go with what this defense is, we could really had something. Because Iowa State was so close a few years there. We're in the Big 12 championship game a couple years ago. Spencer Rattler beat them. They were kind of poking up, could never quite break through, and now they've kind of taken a tiny step back. But Matt Campbell's a really good coach. Well, I'm sure they'll be ready to go on Saturday. That's for sure. So if you had to narrow it down to one key for Oklahoma, we talked about a lot of things, a lot of matchups and things like that. Oklahoma has to do blank to win this game, or if they do blank, they win this game.
It's still Brocktober. Tyrell Brock is their leading rusher. Tyrell Brock is still Brocktober. He averages 5 yards a carry. He only has 2 touchdowns on the season. If Oklahoma's going to win this game, they have to not turn the football over. That's obvious, and first and foremost, I'll be Captain Obvious on that one. But the other thing is they have to block that Iowa State front seven that I talked about. They have to get to their assignment. It can be a little bit confusing not knowing who to block. We've talked about it in the past. Go back to the 2017 game when they brought that rush 3 drop 8 thing to Norman and beat Baker Mayfield and Lincoln Riley, the best offensive coach and the best player in America that year, right? They didn't know what to do against those guys when Baker would drop back. It was like, where are my receivers? There was nobody open. So that's something that they're gonna try and confuse Dylan Gabriel. So what they're going to have to do is at times when they need to run the football effectively. They need to be able to move the chains. And it just so happens that you've got the nation's leading rusher in terms of yards per carry in Eric Gray. If they can get him going a little bit and then come in with one of those change of pace guys, be able to run the football. And it's all on the offensive line. It's not on Eric Gray. It's not on Marcus Major. It's not on anybody else. It's on the O-line to get those guys blocked, to get them just a little sliver of daylight to run through.
Yeah, I'll go on the other side of the ball. They're going to have to find a way to stop the run. Like I mentioned, that's the one thing that this Iowa State team is just awful at is running the football. Everything else, Deckers has moments. Hutchinson's awesome. The defense is obviously the best in the conference. Oklahoma has to find a way to overcome their shortcomings and say, we are going to make you one-dimensional. Because if Iowa State's able to run the football and you're reliant on Woody Washington, who's not like an overly big, super athletic kind of corner, right? If you're having to rely on that, or CJ Colden, the technician, as Woody Washington kind of had labeled him at Big 12 Media Day way back when, if you're having to rely on Key Lawrence or Justin Burrows over the top on Hudson, like that's just not a great recipe when you also have to respect the run game. If you're able to really buckle down defensively and just do one thing well, which is stop the run, then you can use every resource at your disposal to say, we're going to try everything to stop Hutchinson and make somebody else through the year beat you. And I'm not sure that Iowa State has anybody else that can really, like, Charlie Kolar's not there to torment the defense over the middle of the field, because everyone talked about his height, but like I don't think Charlie Kolar got enough credit for being as athletic and as dynamic in the open field as he was. It's really hard to replace. So if you can stop the run, you can try and key in on Xavier Hutchinson and make life easier. If you can't do that, and if Iowa State's offense can do whatever they want, buckle up. So you're going to have to score with them, and it's the Iowa State defense. It's not a given that you're going to put 40 points on the board.
Hunter Deckers is completing 68% of his passes right now, guys. 13 touchdowns, but 7 interceptions. He can be had through the air, taking the ball away, as you mentioned before. But if he gets going on offense and is able to carve up that OU secondary, I don't think there's any question. The byproduct of that is they're going to be able to run the football. So Oklahoma needs to be able to shut down the run. Yes, Iowa State only averages 3.3 yards per carry as a team. So you would think there would be an advantage built in there, but guess what? If Hunter Deckers decides to drop back and throw the football deep, you better be able to stop the pass, or it's going to open the floodgates. If they play like they've been playing in the secondary the last, 2 of the last 3 games, Iowa State can win this game and probably will win this game. They need to buckle down that secondary.
We'll have our full game picks on Friday on AllSooners.com. But yes, no question, does Oklahoma win this game on Saturday?
I say yes. I put it in my percentages that Oklahoma has a better percentage of chance of winning than losing. So, yeah, I'm going to have to say yes.
I don't feel good about it, but sure, yes.
I'm right there with you. I say yes also, but I don't know what my score and final prediction is going to be on Friday, but it's going to be close. It feels like a pick 'em. It does. I think Oklahoma's better, but in Ames and just all that, they're marginally better, and then it's in Ames, which is kind of the neutralizer. So we'll see. We'll see what happens on Saturday. Should be fun. We'll all be there. All right, we'll take a timeout here. Who's going to hop out? Ryan and I will hang with you for the third segment. We're going to look around the Big 12 slate, another really good weekend in a really deep conference this year. Talk about a little NFL stuff, and then also Oklahoma basketball exhibition last night. We were at the Lloyd Noble Center. We'll give you our takeaways from what we saw from the first game for Porter Moser's second team last night in Norman. So we'll take a timeout. We'll be right back. Final segment next on the AllSooners Podcast. Final segment of the AllSooners Podcast, episode 153. Get some last few things here. Send you on your way into your final weekend of October. It's already almost November. It's kind of insane. We've really gotten pretty lucky with the whole weather so far. It's been a very warm October, but the cold is moving in. It's about to rain down chilliness on us very, very soon. Last couple of days have been pretty cold, so that's coming up fast. I think truly warm games are over. It's going to be cold away.
Well, because the Kansas game was like the weird. So I was doing pregame on stage with the franchise, and so at 7 a.m. when we got there, though, it still wasn't like light out. I needed like pants and like a quarter zip or whatever, and then by the time like we were signing off, I was like sweating and just like I need to be back in like golf shorts and just a shorts. Oh, this is a disaster.
It was sneaky hot on the field. I wasn't prepared for it to be. It was warm. I was getting a little sweaty out there. So I don't think it's going to be the case this weekend. It's going to be cold. I think, like I said earlier, I think once the game gets going, it won't be too bad. But pregame and walking that mile-long trek that we have from Hilton Coliseum all the way to Jack Trice Stadium where we park, we're going to be chilly right there. So we'll make it through. It's going to be fun. Been to Ames once before. It was a good time. So we'll get up there this weekend. It's another big weekend in the Big 12. This conference really does deliver every weekend right now. I mean, there's interesting matchups across the board. Once again here, TCU, who's the darling right now and is starting to get the attention nationally as being like, okay, this team might actually have a shot at the playoff. Major trap game spot. They go to West Virginia on Saturday. It's 11 a.m. in Morgantown. That feels very treacherous for TCU. You also have Oklahoma State is in Manhattan, one of the bigger games in the country this weekend. The Pokes out there at Kansas State. Adrian Martinez doesn't sound great that he's going to play. We'll see what happens there. And then Baylor is in Lubbock. The Butt Bowl is back. Bears and Red Raiders Saturday night in Lubbock. Anytime there's a night game in Lubbock, I lean Texas Tech almost no matter what. But, all these games, the most confident, the spreads are OU -1, Kansas State -1.5, Texas Tech -2.5, and then TCU -7.5. All one possession, and you could totally see a path for West Virginia to beat TCU. It's another interesting weekend in the conference.
No, absolutely. Because when you look at, TCU just laid it on West Virginia, but West Virginia had I think it was 5 drives where they crossed the Texas Tech 30, and the Red Raiders were able to either force a turnover, miss field goal, whatever. And so it's West Virginia was moving the ball. They just couldn't finish off drives, kind of like against Pitt in their opener. They're moving the ball, and they have the tip drill pick 6, and then it's just game over. Pitt's going to win that thing. So especially with the defensive line talent that they have, Stills out there, all it takes is a couple of big moments. And TCU has shown a propensity over the last couple of weeks to fall behind way early. So doing that at home against Oklahoma State and Kansas State, though the opponents are better, doing that at home is one thing. Doing that in Morgantown, that's a madhouse. If you fall behind 14 points really quick, that'll be a big test. And Max Duggan's done a really good job of not turning to turnover Max Duggan, but if he's on the road, maybe he kind of gets a little antsy. And then, like the questions surrounding, like, Mike Gundy says AJ Martinez is going to start. Don't worry about it. Chris Kleiman's like, well, he's got to run full speed. If Will Howard plays in that game, it's going to be a disaster because Will Howard still stinks. Like, he had a couple of nice drives and then all that stuff. And then, the Butt Bowl is going to be wild because apparently Baylor can't play defense, which is just something I didn't have on my bingo card.
No.
Regardless of if Baylor repeats as Big 12 champion, makes back to Arlington, just being bad at defense the last couple of weeks has been a head scratcher for Dave Aranda and that crew.
100%. I don't know. Baylor is one of the more disappointing teams in the country for me. Really thought they had a chance to build on last year, have Chapin. There was all this reason to think that they're going to be really good and have a chance to win the conference again. And they're just kind of middling along. I got 3 losses, might lose this weekend. And I got my eye on that game in Morgantown big time. It's 11 a.m. game there as well, like we said. So it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if I'm checking the score in Ames this weekend, during Oklahoma's game and saying, oh, West Virginia's up, late in that game. And I think TCU is really good, but I don't know. That just feels like such a trap game spot on the road in Morgantown, 11 a.m. You're coming off some big wins, in consecutive weeks for TCU. Feels treacherous. So we'll see what the Frogs can do and if they can get to 8-0 this weekend in Morgantown. As for the NFL, it was a pretty light week for Sooners in the NFL. There wasn't a lot. Kyler played Thursday night, played all right. The Eagles were off. Baker's still hurt. Mark Andrews had a rare weekend of doing basically nothing with the Ravens. Joe Mixon had a pretty nice day. It seemed like the Bengals are really starting to find that groove again, with Mixon certainly being a big part of that. One of the more noteworthy things really that's come out the last week is that the Panthers, without Baker, with P.J. Walker, upset the Bucs, and it sounds like there's a very good chance that Baker's going to get Wally pipped here, and that P.J. Walker is going to remain the starter even when Baker comes back, which, people are acting like it's a benching. It kind of is, but not really. He didn't get benched. He got hurt, and P.J. Walker is just playing well, so they're going to probably stick with him. It's kind of a benching, but not. It's like a half benching, but not great for Baker, obviously. It's always a tough look, too, when the backup plays well and wins a big game. Kind of a rough deal there for Mr. Mayfield.
Yeah, interesting to see what Walker does in game 2, kind of getting the reins. But, sure. We've talked about this, and I know that with who's listening and all that stuff, that sometimes you have to tap dance around it. But, Baker has been really bad this year. He's been really bad. And, yes, it's not a perfect situation, but guess what? The NFL is a cutthroat league, and you as the quarterback, if you want to be a starter, you have to go raise the ceiling of that group. And Baker hasn't done it because he's been awful this season. So PJ Walker should have probably started anyway. He's shown that he can come into this league and be frisky before. And while Baker's done that as well, Baker hasn't been frisky this year in that Carolina offense. So that's probably deserved regardless of if Baker was hurt or not. But when you look elsewhere, Roger Stevenson was one of the few bright spots on a really bad week for New England when it had football. I think the biggest news might be that it was the game of standout Oklahoma left tackles, the Chiefs and the 49ers. Trent Williams came back, which is good for the Niners, but Orlando Brown was making kids look or making the 49ers defensive ends look like kids, which is not something that defense sees often because Orlando Brown was just smothering people.
100%. So we'll see how that shakes out going forward. Cardinals did get a big win last Thursday, so see if they can right the ship, and it'll be up to Jalen Hurts to see if he can stay undefeated. To see, I think they got the Steelers, so a pretty good shot there, you would think, for Hurts to keep that going with Philly. Let's flip over to basketball to wrap up. Believe it or not, OU fans who maybe don't pay that close attention, OU played a real-life game yesterday at the Lloyd Noble Center. We were both there. Exhibition against OCU, Oklahoma City. It's an NAIA school. So, you go in as an exhibition against, again, NAIA school. You're just looking for that game is not for the people that we already know. Jalen Hill, the Groves bro, those are known quantities. You know what those guys are. And you want to see their improvement, but you're not going to be able to get that from playing OCU. What you're looking for, is our first chance to see the new guys, the transfers, the freshmen, things like that. there was a lot to like, honestly, in this game. It was kind of ugly at time offensive, but they still got 89 on the board. Real quick, and I'll turn it over to you. Grant Sherfield, I think, is going to be awesome. I really was encouraged by seeing him. He's got a very, and hearing him talk in postgame too, he's got a very level floor general vibe. Like they need that, and he feels like he's going to be a lot of fun this year. I think OU fans are going to really enjoy having him on the team. Joe Bamaseal, his arms go to the floor. He was blocking shots and getting in passing lanes. He's going to be a lot of fun, and I really liked both the freshmen, Milos Uzan and Otega Owa. Uzan was great. He looks really good. He looks like a guy who could play right away and be a contributor. Owa too, but Uzan especially stuck out to me as this guy can play. So I think there's a lot to be encouraged by, as much as you can. It's an exhibition against OCU. I mean, what do you make of it? But there were some things to be excited about if you're an OU fan looking to decide, is this team going to be better than last year? I think we all think they are going to be. No reason to think any different from what we saw yesterday.
Yeah, the 3-point shooting wasn't great. At times the shooting wasn't good, but the shooting was awesome last year in the exhibition against Rogers State, and then you never saw that again. And Porter Moser basically, like, Porter is pretty. He doesn't sugarcoat a lot. Like, he'll tell us what he thinks they need to improve on. He'll tell us what he really likes. And he basically went out of his way multiple times to say, guys, we ran the most vanilla offense that you could run whatsoever. And he thinks that because they'd been running different sets in practice, that he's like, guys, I really think he's not worried about the shooting. He's seen the shooting. It goes back to his preseason comments where he was really bullish on the shooting, all that stuff. So if Porter's not going to worry about it through one exhibition, then I'll just cede the floor to him and say, okay, we'll see that. But yeah, you mentioned just the athleticism. Like, even Sherfield, for a guy that's not going to be the biggest guard ever, like, it's just a night and day from like an Umoja Gibson could be physicaled out of games. And it feels like Sherfield's not going to be bothered by that. Sherfield came out, didn't shoot the ball very well. Then he really heated up about 10-minute mark in the second half. And Porter, pulled him out because he was pulling out all the starters and all that stuff. But you saw a guy that was like, because with Umoja, you knew it was he's either on or he's not. And if he's not hitting shots to start the game, it's never going to change. So it was good to see Sherfield work out of a little funk there. And then, yeah, I think the biggest takeaways from the freshmen was that those guys look like, and Porter talked about this, Sherfield and Tanner Gross talked about this after the game, physically, you look at them and go, well, those guys can play in the Big 12 right now. Will they be good?
Yeah.
We'll see. They'll have a ton of freshman moments, I'm sure, but just physically, they should be able to handle the wear and tear of the Big 12, which means that you have that depth that you can rely on. Because there were moments last year, like Alston Mason just fell off the face of the earth, wasn't utilized. Bijan Cortez, even though he had the really good performance at Baylor, after he kind of got injured, it took him a long time to work him back into the rotation, stuff like that. Feels like that won't be a problem with Uzan and Owe, is they'll be able to physically handle it. It'll just be skill-wise, can they calibrate up to the speed of what Big 12 basketball is?
100%. I mean, they're, again, exhibition against OCU, but it feels like there was some breadcrumbs to be excited about. Also, one more little bonus one, Sam Godwin, I don't think anybody really knows just how much of a role he's going to play. I thought he looked pretty good. I mean, he made the most of his minutes. He was getting to the line pretty effectively, and Oklahoma needs another big. I mean, Tanner Groves can't be out there for 40 minutes. I mean, you need another big that you can rely on, and Sam Godwin could be that guy. Yaya Kita, the transfer from Missouri, didn't play much at all till the very end, but he came out there and ripped a 3 out of nowhere. I mean, there's some little, like I said, breadcrumbs of positivity for maybe it's Godwin, maybe it's Kita, maybe you go small. I don't know, but you have to figure out a way to manage the non-Tanner Groves minutes. Not having a second big was a problem last year. They tried to, Ethan Shackel did a pretty good job for a while, but that was kind of a weakness. So, we'll see if Godwin and Kita can kind of fill that void. But I thought Godwin did pretty good. I mean, got some boards. Was, I think, 2 for 2 from the field. Got to the line, like I said. Nobody's asking for much here. Just 10,
right.
Productive minutes, quality minutes. And he looked like he may be able to give that to him. He's got good size, things like that. So I think that was encouraging as well. So not bad. Not a bad night at the Lloyd Noble Center. Crowd was about what you'd expect. I couldn't tell if I thought it was better or worse than I thought it was going to be. I think it was about right where I thought it would be.
Yeah, and it was helped by the OCU crew bringing plenty of people. The baseball team looked like it was there, the parents, all that stuff. So
Sure.
it was
there.
It's about as good a crowd as you could expect for an exhibition game. I mean,
yeah, I mean the reality. I mean, Buddy Hield and Trae Young and Blake Griffin teams didn't get people there for exhibition games or in October, so not much to make of that. But we'll see how it shakes out. They do play a real life game in less than 2 weeks. November 7th is the opener against Sam Houston State. The women actually play at the Lenoble Center right before them, which is weird. You don't get a lot of the double dips, but that's the case. The women play Oral Roberts at 4, and then the men play at 7 that night. So real life basketball coming your way very, very soon. We'll be with them all season long on AllSooners.com. Obviously, it's a little wishy-washy until football's over, but we'll get out there as many times as we can. And then obviously, we got some big games in December: Villanova, Arkansas. So we'll be keeping up with them throughout the season. I think there's, at this point, and we've talked about this after Big 12 Media Days last week, right now, it feels like, I think it's fair to say that if they don't make the tournament this year, it would be disappointing. You're hoping that they can make the tournament. They just missed it last year. Year 2 for Moser. Got some key guys back, some good freshmen. It's not a disaster if they don't make the tournament. They're not Kentucky or Duke or something, but you would like to see this team make the tournament. I think that's got to be the goal. I think you make the tournament and you're pretty much happy with whatever happens after there. You live with it after that.
Yeah, they need to climb up the 3 or 4 lines they were lacking. That is why they ended up as a 1 seed in the NIT instead of in the tournament. Because again, I'm not expecting them to be win the first round. I'm not expecting them to even be off like the 7-10 line. You know what I mean? But just make it.
Yeah, just get in there and then let the chips fall. Just feel like you got some momentum progressing as we go. So we'll see how they look when they get out there in a couple weeks. They get to see Bijan Cortez or Luke Northweather, but Porter said that both guys will be ready for the opener. So nothing to sweat there. OU basketball is back. We are in the overlap period of basketball and football going at the same time, but that's all right. That's all right. It was good to get out to the Lenoble Center again last night. All right, I think that's it for us. We're going to Ames this weekend. Looking forward to it. Who's got a place in Kansas City that we're going to eat dinner on Friday that he's really excited about?
Yeah.
So we'll report back on that in the postgame show on Saturday night. That'll be our next stop in Ames. We'll be there this weekend. Of course, look for all our coverage on AllSooners.com. Tons of preview lead up to the start of the game. And, of course, during the game, the live blog. And then after, full reaction from Brent Venables, coordinators, players, obviously us. And, of course, keep an eye out for the post-game podcast, which we're going to record in Ames on Saturday night. We may dip early. We're trying to come all the way back to Oklahoma after the game. So we may dip early and not record it at the actual stadium. We may do like a car pod, which we did a couple times last year. That remains to be seen. We will have a post-game show, though, so keep an eye out for it. And when that one drops, you can catch it on iTunes, Spotify, Google, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have an Amazon-enabled device, just say, Alexa, play the AllSooners podcast. I'll post it on our website, of course, AllSooners.com. Click on the playlist on your phone, your tablet, or your computer. And if we do a video version, it'll be on Hoover's YouTube page, John Hoover Media. All right, that's it for John Hoover. Signed off a little bit ago, and Ryan Chapman. I'm Josh Callaway. We'll catch you guys in Ames. See you then.